Welcome to the City of Tuscaloosa Fats, Oils, and Grease program. A leading cause of sewer blockages across the United States is the fats, oils, and grease buildup in our sanitary sewers. Fog buildup is usually found in conjunction with tree root growth and with the accumulation of other sediments and debris. Grease deposits are responsible for creating bottlenecks in our sanitary sewer system in the form of partial or complete pipe blockages. The blockages may cause or contribute to sanitary sewer overflows into our local waterways and backups into our homes and businesses. Thus, grease blockages can cause significant damage to properties and be a risk to public health and the environment. Municipalities experience a direct cost burden for responding to pipe blockages, relieving the blockage, cleaning damage done, or paying regulatory fines and penalties for violating their discharge permits because of fog-related problems. SSOs and basement backups also present various levels of public health hazards and pollution of the environment. In addition, there are potentially adverse impacts from fog on the performance of wastewater treatment plants. The maintenance costs associated with the blockages and adverse performance are ultimately passed along to the sewer ratepayer. The City of Tuscaloosa has been implementing grease pollution prevention measures for over 5 years by requiring large commercial or public kitchens to install and properly maintain grease removal devices. A comprehensive fog program has been formulated and was initiated in 2012. State and local regulating agencies include fog management programs as a key activity in their regulatory toolbox. This presentation details the fog management program that has been developed to avoid potential conveyance and treatment performance problems. The Fog Management Program is a formal program by the City of Tuscaloosa that incorporates applicable guidance, policies, and regulations. These measures govern fog generators and haulers in order to manage grease waste generated by customers that discharge to the city's sanitary sewer system or treatment system. The primary purpose of the Tuscaloosa Fog Management Program is to prevent grease-related pipe blockages and subsequent overflows from happening and thus to avoid property damages, environmental problems in the nearby surface waters, and public health hazards. By controlling the discharge of fog to the wastewater collection system, fog buildup in sewer lines and lift stations will be lessened, thereby increasing the wastewater collection system's operating efficiency and minimizing system maintenance expenditures. In addition, an effective fog management program will minimize potential revenue losses associated with the enforcement of fog-related actions. Another important purpose of the program is to prevent fog discharges at the city's wastewater treatment plant from containing concentrations of pollutants or pollutant properties. These might interfere with the operation of the plant or cause the treatment plant to exceed the discharge permit effluent limits or cause pass-through of pollutants to the receiving streams or atmosphere. Goals of the fog management program are to reduce SSOs, to protect the environment and public health, to reduce fog-related expenditures. These goals will be achieved by minimizing fog entering into the city's sanitary sewer infrastructure and keeping it in concentrations or rates allowed, establishing control over the fog discharges at the city's wastewater treatment plant and keeping discharged fog in concentrations within allowed limits. The responsibility to achieve the goals of the city's fog management program will be shared between the City of Tuscaloosa, Tuscaloosa Food Service Establishments, Tuscaloosa Area Fog Haulers, and the citizens of Tuscaloosa. The City of Tuscaloosa's responsibilities will be the following: public fog education and outreach, training to food service establishments, achieving compliance from FSEs, FSE inspections, internal training within the city about the fog program, achieving compliance from FSEs. In order to achieve compliance with the fog management program from all FSEs while maintaining good public relations, compliance enforcement consequences are designed to directly vary with the degree of the FSE compliance cooperation and resolutions. Educate FSEs about the program and requirements through training provided at the program onset. Perform FSE inspections periodically for checking compliance with the program. Encourage compliance through notices of non-compliance and warnings of potential fines and stringent enforcement measures that would follow for persistent non-compliance. Achieving compliance from FSCs. In order to achieve compliance with the fog management program from all FSCs while maintaining good public relations, the following compliance enforcement consequences are designed to directly vary with the degree of the FSC compliance and cooperation resolutions. Verbal warning. The first disciplinary measure for the BMPs where the FSC is told by the SSO fog investigator that the BMP's implementation by the FSC does not comply with the city standards and must be improved. A verbal warning may or may not stipulate a follow-up inspection. Courtesy letter. A standard letter issued by the city which specifies BMP and/or GRD deficiencies identified during the FSC inspection. The courtesy letter stipulates that the follow-up inspection will be performed typically within 5 working days for the GRD deficiencies and within 2 weeks for the BMP deficiencies. Certified letter. A standard letter which specifies BMP and/or GRD deficiencies identified during the inspection. The certified letter is a final warning to the FSC to correct deficiencies within a specified time frame, typically within 5 working days, and is followed by the FSC reinspection. Failure to comply with the fog facility standard shall result in the issuance of a summons. Issue non-compliance summons following determination that the FSC is in violation, and pursue a municipal code violation in municipal court. Terminate water and sewer service to the FSC if all measures have been tried and proved unsuccessful. Training to FSCs. Educating FSC owners and managers about the fog maintenance program, specifically in implementing best management practices and performing proper GRD maintenance, is essential for achieving their compliance with the program. The SSO fog investigators are the principal means for delivering the fog management program requirements and necessary education to the FSC community. At the onset of the fog program, the FSC's knowledge and awareness of the program may vary greatly. The SSO fog investigator will visit the facility and provide training to instruct the FSC owner or manager, who will then instruct all other employees of how the fog program should be implemented and how it affects their business. During the visit, the SSO fog investigator will give the following forms to the FSC owner or manager. Initial training checklist. This form is listing other forms that the fog inspector will show and explain to the FSC owner or manager during this initial visit. The form must be kept in the FSC as a record of completed initial training. Training development form. This form is instructing the FSC owner or manager how to develop a fog training program for the employees of the FSC. The FSC owner or manager is also instructed about other forms that the FSC is required to use, which all will remain in the FSC and be shown to the SSO fog investigator during the future FSC inspections upon request. Tracking of employee training forms will list employees working at the FSC and show the dates which they received the training in the kitchen's BMPs. Tracking of GRD maintenance training forms. These will list the employees that received trainings in GRD inspection and cleaning and the dates when they were trained. Inspection forms for grease interceptors. These will be used to keep record of how often the grease interceptors are inspected by the FSC personnel. Inspection cleaning forms for grease traps. These will be used to keep record of how often grease traps are inspected and cleaned by the FSC personnel. The FSC owner and manager is also instructed about other forms that the FSC is required to use, which all will remain in the FSC and be shown to the SSO fog investigator during the future FSC inspections upon request. Standard operating procedures for 25% rule forms. These explain the procedure for checking grease and solids accumulations in the GRDs, both grease traps and grease interceptors. Each employee of the FSC who will be trained to inspect the GRDs will be shown this SOP and will be given all necessary explanations. Fog hauler manifest forms. These will be used to document the cleaning of the GRDs, mainly grease interceptors, performed by the professional fog haulers. Checklist for hauler monitoring forms. These will be used by the FSC personnel to monitor grease interceptor pump outs and to ensure proper cleaning and maintenance procedures are followed and that the fog hauler does not take any shortcuts. Commercial food service establishments. All commercial food service establishments doing business in Tuscaloosa require a business license issued by the city. One of the requirements for the FSCs in obtaining the code compliance certificate is to have a grease removal device installed and approved by the city. The requirement is based on the city ordinance, which specifies that all FSCs must install, operate, and maintain grease control devices on the premises of the establishment, which prevents the discharge into the sanitary sewer of solid or viscous substances in amounts which may cause obstruction to the flow in a sanitary sewer collection system or interference with the operation of the wastewater treatment plant. The city ordinance also says that the city, ADEM, and the EPA have a right of entry to all properties for inspection, observation, measurements, sampling, and testing in accordance with the provisions of the division, and may at any reasonable times have access to and copy any records, inspect any monitoring equipment or method required, inspect sources of wastewater, treatment facilities, and sample any effluents which the owner or operator is required to sample. The regulations require that the amount of fog in the wastewater discharged to the sewer system be less than 100 milligrams per liter parts per million. FSCs that implement BMPs described in this section and properly maintain GRD devices should be able to satisfy the limit prescribed in the ordinance. Fog best management practices for FSCs. Proper fog handling at FSCs will reduce the amount of fog that enters into the sewer system. Kitchen best management practices include kitchen's daily activities and measures to keep fog from being discharged to the sanitary sewer. Proper GRD maintenance practices relate to their cleaning frequencies, effective cleaning methods, and retain pump out records for a specified amount of time. These BMPs include the following: proper equipment and plumbing, proper dishwashing practices, kitchen cleaning practices, spill prevention and cleanup, kitchen signage, fog collecting and proper storage, prohibitions related to fog discharges, GRD maintenance, compliance with the fog program, employee training. The following is a list of forms associated with the documentation of the fog program. Initial training checklist form, training and development form, tracking of employee training form, tracking of GRD maintenance training form, inspection form for grease interceptors, inspection and cleaning form for grease traps, standard operating procedures for the 25% rule, fog hauler manifest form, checklist for hauler monitoring. Initial training checklist. This form is listing other forms that the fog inspector will show and explain to the FSC owner or manager during his initial visit. The form must be kept in the FSC as a record of completed initial training. Training development form. This form is instructing the FSC owner or manager how to develop a fog training program for the employees of the FSC. Training development form, page 2. This form is a quiz designed to assist with instructing the FSC owner or manager how to develop a fog training program for the employees of the FSC. Tracking of employee training. This form will list employees working at the FSC and show the dates when they received their training in the kitchen BMPs. Tracking of GRD maintenance training form. This form will list selected employees that received training in the GRD inspection and cleaning and the dates when they were trained. Inspection form for the grease interceptors. This form will be used to keep record of how often grease interceptors are inspected by the FSC personnel. Inspection form for the grease interceptors, page 2. This form will be used to assist in keeping records of how often grease interceptors are inspected by the FSC personnel. This form also lists the fog discharge prohibitions. Inspection and cleaning form for grease traps. This form will be used to keep record of how often grease traps are inspected and cleaned by the FSC personnel. Inspection and cleaning form for the grease traps, page 2. This form will be used to assist in keeping records of how often grease traps are inspected and cleaned by the FSC personnel. The standard operating procedure for the 25% rule form. This form explains the procedure for checking grease and solids accumulations in the GRDs, both grease traps and grease interceptors. Each employee of the FSC who will be trained to inspect the GRDs will be shown this SOP and will be given all necessary explanations. The Fog Hauler Manifest form. This form will be used to document the cleaning of the GRDs, mainly grease interceptors, performed by the professional fog haulers. Instructions for completing the Fog Hauler Manifest. This form explains the procedure for completing the Fog Hauler Manifest with the instructions for the FSC representatives, instructions for the fog haulers, and instructions for the City of Tuscaloosa personnel. The Fog Hauler Manifest. This form has 3 parts that are filled out as follows. The top portion is filled in by the FSC representative who signs and dates the form when the waste is removed, specifies the number of GRDs cleaned, and estimates the quantity of fog removed in gallons. The middle portion is filled in by the fog hauler who, before leaving the FSC, fills in the details about the hauler business, driver and truck's access pass card, and after discharging fog at the plant dates the form to indicate the date of discharge. The bottom portion is filled in by the city's database specialist after entering information into the database. The manifest is printed on a carbonless white, canary, and pink form. The Fog Hauler Manifest. The steps in filling and processing the manifest are shown in Figure 50. The steps in filling and processing the manifest are shown in Figure 50. The FSC keeps the pink copy of the manifest after the hauler has accepted the waste. After collecting fog loads from one or more FSCs, the fog driver will discharge the fog at the wastewater treatment plant. At that time, the driver dates the forms from each FSC and leaves the original white copy in the drop box at the wastewater treatment plant and retains the canary copy for company records. The original form is forwarded to the city's database specialist who enters the information into the city's database and retains original copies of the manifest for a period of 1 year. It is the FSC's responsibility to keep the pink copy of the manifest at the FSC and make it available to the SSO fog investigator upon request at the inspection. It is the fog hauler's responsibility to keep the canary copy of the manifest at the hauler's place of business and keep it available upon request. Checklist for hauler monitoring. This form will be used by the FSC personnel to monitor grease interceptor pump outs to ensure proper cleaning and maintenance procedures are followed and that the fog hauler does not take any shortcuts. What will I, as an FSC, need to do to get in compliance with the fog management program? Here's the bottom line. In order to get in compliance with the fog management program, the FSC must implement best management practices. FSCs may use the provided checklist for implementing BMPs. The FSC must also install, operate, and maintain a properly sized grease removal device. FSCs may use the provided checklist for requirements of the fog management program related to condition and performance of GRDs. The fog management program also includes requirements to keep proper documentation about employee training and GRD maintenance. FSCs will use the provided checklist. In order to get in compliance with the fog management program, FSCs may use the following checklist for implementing BMPs. Make sure drain screens are installed in all fog-bearing sinks and floor drains. Make sure employees scrape solid food from pots, pans, fryers, utensils, and dishes into the trash container, and that there is no waste food in the sink. Make sure employees dry wipe pots and utensils prior to washing. Make sure employees sweep the floor before mopping and that they do not attempt to remove floor drains to sweep in debris from the sweeping floors. Make sure employees properly clean any grease spills on the floor using towels and absorbent material and using wet mops only to remove trace residues. Make sure proper spill cleanup kits are available in the facility. Make sure small grease waste containers are available and used for collecting used oil and grease, and that these containers have lids. Place proper signage about grease control and listing of BMPs on the wall. In order to get in compliance with the fog management program, in facility outside areas, FSE should apply the following measures. Make sure outside grease containers are covered and closed. Make sure there are no grease spills on the pavement or other surfaces from transporting grease to the outside containers. Make sure that the outside grease containers are not leaking and replace any damaged ones properly. Make sure that the employees do not dump oil and grease into the storm sewer. Make sure that the employees do not clean equipment outside. The equipment should be scraped and dry wiped indoors and any washing done in the utility sinks connected to a GRD. Make sure that the employees do not wash mats outdoors. The mats should be vacuumed and washed in utility sinks connected to a GRD. FSEs may use the following checklist for requirements of the fog management program related to the condition of the performance of GRDs. Make sure that a GRD functions. The device should contain wastewater with a grease layer floating on the top and be filled below the invert of the outlet pipe. Make sure that the 25% rule is met. For example, that the thickness of the layer of the floating grease and solids combined does not exceed 25% of the operating depth of the device. Make sure that the inlet pipe of the GRD is visible during inspection. Make sure that the outlet pipe of the GRD is visible during inspection. Make sure that there are no roots growing in the interceptor and have them cleaned if necessary. Make sure that there is no corrosion damage to the GRD. If metal traps are corroded, replace with new ones and consider grease traps made of plastic. Make sure to repair corrosion damage to the interceptor promptly and do not wait for severe damage to develop. Make sure to correct any broken parts, replace missing parts, especially missing outlet tees. The fog management program also includes requirements to keep proper documentation about employee training and GRD maintenance. The FSE's checklist continues as follows. Make sure that the employee training log is complete. For example, that employees get training about proper fog handling and learn requirements of the fog management program. Keep the training log current and provide training to new employees, as well as periodically doing refreshment training to already trained employees. Make sure that the GRD inspection and cleaning log is complete. Employees in charge of inspection and cleaning of grease traps and grease interceptors need to do these assignments regularly and keep the GRDs in good operating condition. Learn the required frequency of inspection and cleaning of a GRD in the facility and adopt the routine to inspect and clean accordingly. Make sure that the fog hauler manifests are complete. For more information about Tuscaloosa's fog program, please visit tuscaloosa.com/fog.